In this video, we'll go over 3 of the banned equip spell cards. Normally some of the worst kinds of cards in the game, occasionally they can become quite powerful. First up, we have Butterfly Dagger Elma. This is an equip spell card which grants whichever monster it's equipped to 300 attack points, and simply has the effect that if it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard while equipped, you can then return this card to your hand. So in the past, you could equip this card to Gear Feed the Iron Knight, in order for that monster to immediately destroy with its effect, which would then allow you to return it to your hand and then just repeat infinitely. So if you had a way to take advantage of being able to activate a spell card an infinite amount of times per turn, then you could use this to all kinds of advantage. Like if you have a Royal Magical Library on the field, each time you activate a spell card you get to place 1 spell counter on it, and then you get to draw a card by removing 3 spell counters. So with Gearfried and Elma, you'd be able to have enough spell counters to draw every single card in your deck as soon as you had the combo set up. Or as I'll show on screen, if you have Gearfried and Fire Princess on the field, as well as Morale Boost. Morale Boost has the ability to increase your life points by 1000 every time an equipped spell card is activated. Fire Princess allows you to inflict 500 damage to your opponent each time you gain life points. So you could just infinitely equip Gearfried the Iron Knight with Butterfly Dagger Elma in order to infinitely increase and deal damage to your opponent, until you deal the 8,000 points of damage required for an FTK. Basically, the big problem with Butterfly Dagger Elma is its lack of a once per turn on its ability to return to your hand, which causes all kinds of problems. Even if the card does have the ability to miss timing, it doesn't really matter in a controlled situation where you just infinitely repeat a combo to activate a spell card as much as you want. The card was banned in April of 2005, and is one of the longest cards on the ban list. So, can Butterfly Dagger Elma be unbanned? No, because it still allows you to infinitely activate a spell card. Granted, it's not something you could do very easily in all meta decks that currently exist, but I'm sure someone could think of a way to take advantage of it in the modern era, even if its old uses are kind of outdated. You just really don't want to mess with cards that can infinitely return themselves to your hand. That's why Sinister Serpent got an errata in order to give it some restrictions on returning to your hand, and that card only ever returned itself to your hand once per turn. How could Butterfly Dagger Elma be fixed to be unbanned? Well, if they gave it a hard once per turn, that would do it. Next up, we'll be going over Premature Burial. This is an equipped spell card which can be activated by paying 800 life points and targeting 1 card in your graveyard, in order to special summon that target and equip it with this card, where this card is then destroyed when that equipped monster is destroyed as well. So it's kind of like a Call of the Haunted, but in spell card form, and this card is probably one of the strongest equipped spell cards ever printed. Which is kinda saying something, because technically it's a weaker version of Monster Reborn, a card that's currently limited to 1 copy in the game. Monster Reborn is a normal spell card that allows you to special summon 1 monster from either graveyard to your side of the field, with no restrictions on its target. Premature Burial requires you to pay life points, only targets a card from your graveyard, and even destroys the card if it's destroyed on the field. But Premature Burial is infinitely more useful than Monster Reborn, and the reason it's more useful is because it's an equipped spell card. Equipped spell cards are generally pretty terrible, and because most of them are not very useful, they receive a whole bunch of really good support. Now, the reason equipped spell cards are not very useful is because they're very easy to counterplay. Let's take Axe of Despair for example. This card simply gives a monster equipped 1000 attack, and has some niche ability that allows it to return to the top of your deck. Whatever, the important thing about Axe of Despair is the ability to equip itself to a monster and grant it extra attack points. So, if the monster it's equipped to is destroyed, then this card leaves the field and you lose 2 cards in the exchange of your 1 monster being destroyed. So if your opponent uses something like Fissure, which would normally trade 1 for 1, they actually get a 2 for 1 trade because of the equipped spell card also getting destroyed in the process. However, Axe of Despair would also be destroyed if your monster was simply flipped face down with something like Book of Moon, or temporarily removed from the field through the effect of something like number 70 in Malevolent Sin, or if Axe of Despair was simply destroyed with any kind of spell or trap card removal, or if you just use your monster for any kind of extra deck play. Basically, any and all forms of disruption stop equipped spell cards, whereas other kinds of cards don't really have to worry about constantly being attached to a monster. Equipped spell cards are doubly vulnerable to any form of monster or spell and trap card removal, which is why they're usually not very good. They have to be ridiculously broken to see play, and even then that doesn't guarantee they'll see play, as seen by Gridrod and UA Power Jersey. These are 2 equipped spell cards that are borderline broken, and they don't see any competitive play at all because they don't grant you immediate advantage, and instead just mega buff the monster they're equipped to. The kinds of equip cards that do see play are ones that give you advantage immediately, which Premature Burial squarely falls under. There are two other equip spell cards in the game called DDR Different Dimension Reincarnation and Living Fossil, both of which have the ability to special summon a monster when activated, and both absolutely see competitive play because of it. Although DDR Different Dimension Reincarnation is just a straight up downgraded version of Premature Burial. It requires you to discard a card in order to activate it, which is a much harsher restriction than just paying 800 life points, and it only allows you to target a monster that's banished instead of in the graveyard, and it's seen all kinds of competitive play in the past and present. Living Fossil is also a more restricted card. It only allows you to target a level 4 or lower monster, it has all kinds of restrictions on banishing the card after it leaves the field, it sets the monster's attack and defense to 1000, and it even negates the monster's effects while on the field, and it sees all kinds of competitive play. That's because equipped spell cards generally enjoy a whole bunch of support because they're mostly terrible, like Hidden Armory, which allows you to search out any equipped spell card from your deck or graveyard at the cost of giving up your normal summon. Vylon Cube, which allows you to search out any equipped spell card if it's used as a synchro material for a light monster. Power Tool Dragon, a generic level 7 synchro monster, which allows you to search out any equipped spell card from your deck as long as you have 3 copies of it. Infernal Knight Captain Roland, which allows you to send any equipped spell card from your deck to the graveyard and its synchro summon. Armory Call, a trap card that allows you to search out any equipped spell card from your deck and even equip it to a monster immediately if you want to. And Gearbreed, a continuous spell card which allows you to add any equipped spell card you want from your deck or graveyard to your hand during your draw phase. There isn't really this kind of generic support for any other kind of spell cards in the game, or even trap cards for that matter. None of the other types of spell or trap cards enjoy as much generic searchability as the equipped spell card. And the reason it's fine is because of how inherently bad most equipped spell cards are because of just how their mechanics work. And Premature Burial is easily one of the best. It's a generic special summon of any one monster from your graveyard that's not a once per turn, which means it's usable in pretty much every deck, and some of those decks have ways to even take advantage of some of the generic support, like Vylon Cube or Power Tool Dragon. And since Premature Burial doesn't actually do anything to the monster that it's equipped to if it's bounced, it could be reused with cards like Blackwing Zephyros the Elite, a card that special summons itself from the graveyard by returning a card you control to your hand, which is already used in Dark Warrior combos to return DDR Different Dimension Reincarnation. Premature Burial was good back in the days when using Premature Burial with Giant Trunade was considered a big brain combo. It would be absolutely broken in the modern era where they already take advantage of weaker versions of itself. In fact, part of the reason they can make so much really good generic support for equipped spell cards is because all of the really good equipped spell cards are banned, and there's not very many of them. Premature Burial was banned in September of 2008. Could Premature Burial be unbanned? No, it's ridiculously strong in the modern meta. It's like an easier to search out Monster Reborn, which can be reused. How could they fix Premature Burial so that it could be unbanned? Well, considering the fact that Premature Burial has had a handful of retrains, with DDR Different Dimension Reincarnation and Overdone Burial being the two I know about, it seems as if they can fix the card because they've kind of already done it. DDR Different Dimension Reincarnation is already a more limited version of the original card and enjoys a healthy amount of competitive success, but isn't quite broken because of its discard cost and more restrictive pool where it can special summon from. Overdone Burial is an even more restricted version. You have to discard a monster in order to activate this card, which does allow you to special summon a monster from your graveyard, but only a monster who has a level lower than the monster you discarded in order to activate the effect. It also negates the monster's effects on the field and has a hard once per turn on its activation. And what do you know, Overdone Burial has also enjoyed a lot of competitive success. So if two of its worst versions still see competitive play, it really shows just how strong the original was, and how difficult it would be to properly errata the card without it still being broken. However, here's my take on it. Give the original a hard once per turn, have it negate the effects of the monster it special summons, and then banish the monster when it leaves the field. In this form, it would still be way too strong in competitive play, and actually just be a better version of Overdone Burial, so I don't know if that's enough. It's hard to think of a good way to balance the card without completely neutering it, or making it worse than Overdone Burial. That's kind of the threshold I'm aiming for. Still usable, but not worse than Overdone Burial. But I think Overdone Burial kinda does a good job already, so they can just kinda leave it banned and just let Overdone Burial be its nerfed version. Or just take heavy inspiration from it, giving it restricted discard costs in addition to a hard once per turn. Or maybe even have it just discard 2 cards to use it as is, with a hard once per turn as well. And lastly, we have Smoke Grenade of the Thief, the newest equip spell card to be added to the ban list. This is an equip spell card which doesn't actually have an effect until it's destroyed on the field, where you can equip this card to anything, and then after this card is destroyed by a card effect while equipped to a monster, you get to look at your opponent's hand and then discard one card of your choice from it. So kind of like the effects of the banned spell card confiscation, just with extra steps. And for the most part, this card was completely fine for most of its life in the game. It only saw niche play here and there, and it was never consistent enough where it was a problem, or even worth consideration even. It was always kind of one of those joke of a cards that always had the potential to be strong, but was just too difficult to make use of. Then, an archetype was released which allowed them to make use of the effect almost immediately every turn, no problem. The Noble Knight archetype received a level 9 synchro monster called Noble Knight Emperor Charles, which has the effect that during the end phase you can equip any one spell card from your hand or graveyard to this card, to then equip a Fire Warrior monster from your deck to this card as an equipped spell card, which grants it 500 attack. And then it has another effect, where if an equipped spell card is equipped to a monster on the field, even during the damage step, you then get to destroy one card on the field. So if you simply found a way to get Smoke Grenaded the Thief into the graveyard or your hand, then Emperor Charles can equip it and then destroy it during the end phase in order to use the confiscation-like effect on your opponent's hand, which procced during both players' end phases. So you got the effect an additional time during your opponent's end phase. And that discard effect is super good in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! It can kind of win you the game on its own sometimes. And what do you know, Noble Knights had two in-archetype ways of getting Smoke Grenaded the Thief into the graveyard, thanks to their excellent Link 2 monster, Isolde, Two Tales of Noble Knights, which can send a number of equipped spell cards from your deck to the graveyard to special summon a warrior monster from your deck, whose level is equal to the amount of cards you sent to the graveyard. So Isolde could get a whole bunch of equipped spell cards in the graveyard, including Smoke Grenaded the Thief. They also had their level 5 synchro monster, Noble Knight Captain Roland, which when synchro summoned during your end phase allows you to send an equipped spell card from your deck to the graveyard in order to add a warrior monster from your deck to your hand. So with being able to get Smoke Grenade into the graveyard very easily, consistently, on your first turn, no problem, and then equip it to Charles during the end phase and then destroy it immediately with its own effect, basically allow the deck to just rip one card from your opponent's hand every turn by just doing their plays like normal. And Noble Knights were a competitive meta deck, so giving a competitive meta deck a consistent way to use confiscation every turn was a little bit powerful. In fact, Smoke Grenade was a big reason why they saw play. And Link Cross, to be honest. Link Cross heavily contributed to the success of their deck as well, which is why they were hit so hard when both of these cards were banned together in December of 2020. Although, funny enough, it wasn't just Noble Knights that could take advantage of it. In Dragon Link, they can very easily make use of Vylon Cube for synchro plays, which allows them to search out any equipped spell card from their deck. Normally, they'll just use it on something like Living Fossil to extend their combos. However, they also have the option to search out Smoke Grenaded the Thief, thanks to one of their combo cards called Rocket Tracer. Rocket Tracer has the effect where you can destroy one face-up card you control in order to special summon a rocket monster from your deck, at the expense of not being able to summon other non-dark monsters from your extra deck for the rest of the turn. So Dragon Link could also use the effect of Smoke Grenaded the Thief in order to rip a card from their opponent's hand mid-combo to maybe get rid of a hand trap that might stop their future plays, or to just get rid of a starter card so their opponent can't do anything on the next turn. And since two competitive decks could make easy use of Smoke Grenaded the Thief at around the same time, when competitive meta decks weren't really able to make use of it before then, was just too much for the card to stay off the ban list. Could Smoke Grenaded the Thief be unbanned? Yeah, probably, if they ever banned Noble Knight Emperor Charles and Rocket Tracer, which I guess kind of means no. It probably won't be unbanned anytime soon. When people use the effects of Triple Tactics Talent, which allows them to choose one of 3 very powerful effects, the effect to look at your opponent's hand and get rid of one card is often the most chosen effect, because of just how much more powerful that is. So as long as easy access to activating the effect of Smoke Grenade exists, it's probably best to just leave Smoke Grenade on the ban list. How could Smoke Grenaded the Thief be fixed to be unbanned? Honestly, the card seems like it's already fine as is. I don't think they ever intended for this card to be consistently popped in order to activate its effect. It's already really hard to get the effect off. There just happens to be meta decks that are able to consistently use it while doing their combos like normal. So without completely changing the effect or condition of the card, we could just add one extra condition to the activation requirement, where in addition to being destroyed while equipped to a monster, it has to be during your opponent's turn only. Similar to how artifact cards work, so you only gain the effect during your opponent's turn. It could still be used with Rocket Tracer and Noble Knight Emperor Charles, but not during your turn. So it'd kind of be balanced like a Point of the Red Lotus, where that card is fine in order to rip one card from your opponent's hand because you can't use it during your first turn. Although granted, they only lose the card temporarily with the Point of the Red Lotus, I think Smoke Grenade of the Thief already has a whole bunch of restrictions, where if you just made it so it can only be usable during your opponent's turn, that might be enough to make it not as broken. It would still probably be good though, maybe even overpowered, but not broken. Alright, and that's the end of all banned spell cards explanations. Make sure to watch the playlist for all the other explanations on banned spell cards if you missed them, which will be linked at the end of the video.